This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to continue to debunk some common myths you may hear out there about customers. And this is helpful, again, to have some kind of ammunition ahead of time. If you're approached with one of these comments, then you can answer with some knowledge and you can answer correctly with the correct truth to convey to the customer. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy coaching program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support. From me, I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. You probably heard this one before that customers will say, and this has actually been done before, by the way, I'd rather just fill my backyard with dirt. The pool doesn't add any value, and it's just too expensive to maintain. In reality, actually, if you wanted to do that in the city that I live in, you have to go to the city, pull a permit, and then hire someone who's going to do this professionally. I think the cost is anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 to fill up a pool correctly and to have it inspected that it's going to be fine. And when it rains, it's not going to cause a sinkhole and someone's going to get stuck in there like quicksand. So it's not just a matter of taking dirt and filling up the pool. And this is something that you hear a lot out there, like the pool is too expensive, doesn't really add any value, and it's just something that I'd rather not have. Well, of course, a lot of people will say that, but in reality now, with the cost of pools being so much to build, that pool actually does add value to their house. And so that statement is definitely not true. And it's usually said in a way to kind of make them sound like they're not going to pay you for something, if that makes sense. Like they use that to deflect the fact that they don't want to invest any money into the pool itself. So if you approach them for a new pump or filter, the common comeback is like, well, I mean, the pool is just a big money pit. I'd rather just fill in it with dirt. In other words, don't bother them. They're not going to do anything to improve their pool. And these are the customers when the pump actually burns out. You're like, oh man, now I got to approach this customer about getting their pump replaced. Wish me luck. You know, it's one of those things where their original attitude is not helpful for you selling them anything. And everything you try to do is like an upsell to them. In reality, you can explain to them that their pool actually has increased their property value by X amount of dollars. And you can go on Zillow if you need to and show them listings of the pool and how much more expensive they are for the same. You probably don't want to go through all this detail, but you could if you wanted to, I should say, that a house with a pool is selling for a lot more than a house without a pool, and just explain to them that to build the pool they have in their backyard now, which they may not believe you, but in reality you can tell them the pool in your backyard, to actually dig it and build it, would cost about $100,000 or plus $100,000. At least in my area, a 15 by 30 standard pool is about $130,000. So let them know that the pool does have value and they should be maintaining it because it does add value to their house. They may not care at that point either, but the truth is still the truth. The pool does have value, and maintaining it, paying for a well-maintained pool, if they ever do consider selling the house, is a really good investment. So they're investing in their house as they're, of course, paying for pool service and paying for maintenance, paying for new equipment. And it's something that you just have to kind of just be clear about. And like I said, that's usually used as a strategy to kind of keep you, from selling them anything that you need to sell them for their pool. And it's not something that maybe they don't believe entirely themselves to begin with. Here's another one that you hear often, that doing the pool yourself is going to save you money in the long run. But really, sometimes that's not true, because if you're like me and you've taken over accounts where there's tons of chemicals back there piled up, empty bottles of chlorine, tons of algicide back there, and the customer said that they just went to the pool store last month and spent $800 on chemicals and their pool still looks terrible, then you're going to question the fact that doing it yourself will save you money. Because in reality, that may be true in some cases, and in some cases, doing it yourself does not save any money. It may be more harm than good. I just mentioned that a cookie cutter pool in my area is about $130,000. And if you were to try to maintain that yourself, you could probably do it. You're going to have to pay, of course, maintenance costs as far as chemicals, and then you're going to have time to do that. But would you really want to take a chance on an investment that expensive if you don't know what you're doing? It's like buying a Ferrari and doing your own oil change. It's just not the most logical way to operate. And a lot of people don't have the time to invest. So if you want to do the pool yourself, it can be done. I'm not saying you can't do it. And a lot of people do their own pool. It just takes 3 components for it to work properly. Time to do your own pool, of course. Then you have to have knowledge of chemistry. And then the third thing is you actually have to do it. That third part is what's missing a lot of times. Sometimes the time aspect is missing as well. And it could be a combination of both time and actually doing it themselves. Doing the pool as in cleaning it, adding chemicals, balancing the water. That does take time and effort. And a lot of people say they're going to do their pool themselves, but they don't put the time and effort into it. They may have knowledge of what they need to do, add chlorine to the pool, keep this certain chlorine level. But unless you have all 3 elements working together, you can't successfully take care of your own pool. And invariably what happens, and this happens all the time because I've walked into backyards with this problem, you'll spend, or the person, I should say, spends hundreds of dollars on chemicals. The pool looks no better than when they started to try to maintain it. And then they end up hiring a pool service to take over after really wasting time, money, and energy. So if you really can't maintain your own pool, I wouldn't try it. For example, I can change my own oil in my truck. I've done it. I can rotate my own tires in my truck. I've done that as well. I can change my brakes. I can put in a starter, an alternator. I've done all these things once or twice. New battery. But I just don't want to do it. And I find that it's much easier to have someone do these services for me because it takes more time than I really have available. And my level of expertise is just not there. I mean, when I did my brakes, I was like driving down my neighborhood testing and I'm like, hope I did it right. It's one of those things where you can do it, but sometimes it's better to hire a professional and not worry about it and let them take care of it, especially if it's a large investment like a brand new pool, or if you bought a house with a pool that's fairly new and you want to maintain that look and you want to maintain the value of that pool with your property, hiring a professional definitely is much better in a lot of cases. And I'm not saying you can't do it yourself. I'm just saying sometimes it's not as logical to do yourself. We can hire someone else to do that. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. For you. I think one thing you can explain to people is, or prospective clients, is that life is not always about saving money, but life is about time and doing things you want to do. And a lot of people don't want to clean their own pool or maintain their pool, and they don't really think about spending the money. Some people may think about spending the money and want to try to do it themselves, but in the long run, sometimes you just have to be honest with them and let them know that you can take care of the pool. This is what you do for a living. They won't have any worries, and they can spend their time doing other things. I like to use this example with people that, want to do it themselves. For the 30 or 40 minutes that you're going to put in doing your pool, and maybe a few times during the week if you have to do any adjustments, wouldn't it be better to focus on your primary profession and increase your revenue there rather than trying to save on service, doing something you don't even like doing when you can hire someone to do it? So there's all different arguments you can use, not really arguments, but examples and persuasive ways of saying that doing it yourself is an option, but it may not be the best option. Here's another one that is kind of in the same vein here. Draining my pool is not environmentally friendly, so I don't want to drain any water out. Really, in reality, how many times have you walked by someone's house, or even in your city? This happens all the time in my city, where the sprinklers are running and there's an irrigation leak. Water's running out onto the street. Now, how many people that have an irrigation leak in their front yard and they're losing hundreds of gallons of water every week with irrigation say, wow, my irrigation leak is bad for the environment? Really, nobody says that. They're like, oh wow, I'm losing a lot of water here in front. I better fix that sprinkler. So why is it with a pool, when you tell a customer that you have to drain 2 feet of water so that you can lower the cyanuric acid level, or maybe there's too much salt in the water from a previous pool service, you need to lower the pool down to get the salt system activated, they act like it's the end of the world when all the time they're wasting water. They may have a leaky toilet in their house. They may have, someone takes a really long shower in their house. Who knows what it may be, but they are wasting water in other areas. I just think that the truth of it is they're wasting water. In a lot of cases, people waste water in everything they do. But when it comes to the pool, the optics of draining the water is too much reality for them. They'll see the water go down 2 feet and they'll be like, wow, that's a lot of water that I just lost right there. In reality, it'll take maybe 2 hours to fill up with an autofill or with a fill line. And it's really not as much water as an irrigation leak would cause, or just wasting water on a casual basis. And the reality is, and the truth is, in order for the pool to really be sustainable, there has to be partial drains happening at least every year or two. Sometimes complete drains, which is like the end of the world for some people, but it's something that needs to be done to maintain the pool. And as Bob Lowry often stated, water is still the cheapest chemical you can use in your pool. I mean, the cost of lowering the pool down by 2 feet versus switching to a different chlorine type or using a cyanuric acid reducing chemical like Bioactive, or there's a pouch that they also sell, put in the Skimmer. The cost of that is still, and I'll say this, the cost of that is still more expensive than draining 1 foot of water or 2 feet of water out of the pool, and maybe even more water depending on how much of that product you use. So think about it for a minute. Think about draining some water out of the pool and how it's really not a big deal. And if you play it down to the customer that it's not a big deal, that water is still the cheapest chemical, it's much better to drain 2 feet of water instead of you adding more chlorine to balance the water out every week. And once the customer understands the fact that it's not the end of the world and draining the pool is actually part of what they have to do, this is part of having a pool, then I think it's a much easier sell to the customer. And it's something that has been a problem in my area, especially since we've had 2 droughts in the last 10 or 12 years. Everyone thinks that draining the pool, a partial drain or a full drain, is not environmentally friendly and wasting water, when in reality, you're actually making the pool care much easier. You're saving money on chemicals, and you're saving money on some expensive alternatives than just simply draining a foot or 2 of water out of the pool. The funny thing is, the same people that complain about draining their pool are sometimes the same customers that will call you panicking, and this happens here when we get a lot of rain and the water is like really high up, coming out of up to the coping, and they'll call you panicking saying, hey, I need someone to come drain my pool. The rainwater is almost overflowing my pool. It's just one of those things where it's like, whenever I get that call, I'm like, aren't you the same person that doesn't want to drain a foot of water in the summertime? So why is it okay to drain 2 or 3 inches of rainwater out of your pool. Doesn't make a lot of sense. And again, it all boils down to the optics of it. The pool is a big body of water. A sprinkler leak is something that they don't actually count how many gallons is coming out of there, when in reality it's gushing water and there's a ton of water being lost when that's happening. But they don't really look at it that way. So try to get past the optics of it and get the customer to understand that water is the cheapest chemical, and draining their pool will save them money in their pool care and make the pool a lot better and safer to use each time they go to use it. And this last one kind of ties in here, and it's that a pool is just getting more and more expensive to maintain, and I wouldn't recommend a pool to somebody, and I don't really think the costs are justified. You'll get some variation of this one where they're either complaining about the overall cost of maintaining the pool, the cost of the pool increasing over the years, and it is a myth, but it is also a truth mixed in there because of the explosive growth in the pool industry, things have gotten more expensive. There were some things during the pandemic that caused increases. I don't believe we even recovered from the Biolab trichlor factory burning down, because trichlor tablets have never dropped back down under $100 for a 50-pound bucket. So all of these things are, of course, part of the industry, and it's hard to say that, the cost of having a pool is just not worth the pool. I don't believe that's true. I believe the pool is a luxury item, and if you can afford it, if you can afford to have it in your backyard, you have to be able to afford to maintain it. And it's true, the chemicals have inflated faster than the rate of inflation over the years. I think the rate of inflation is like 5%, and pool chemicals have gone up 15 to 20%, and they're still rising every year to some degree ahead of the rate of inflation. The cost of replacement equipment has also somewhat skyrocketed over the last 5 years. The price of pumps, motors, and those components have really gone up to a degree where people will notice the rising cost of pool maintenance and ownership. But I don't think that you can say outright that a pool is not worth it because it costs more to maintain it now. I think in reality, we had very low inflation in the pool industry for so many years that when we had real inflation, it took a big jump, bigger than most people expected. But I really think that if you look at it from the perspective of how much it costs to build a pool, the maintenance hasn't gone up nearly as much as the price of having a pool built. And then, yes, the equipment cost has gone up pretty dramatically over the last 5 or 6 years over what it was previously. And so, even though there's some truth to that, I still believe that it's, again, something that is propagated out there, that the pool costs or the cost of having a pool is just not sustainable. When in reality, it is sustainable. It's just going to cost you more money for everything that's pool related. And to be honest with you, in this industry, there are a lot of things that I look at and I'm like, come on, $8 for a little Polaris wheel nut or $50 for that part? That's pretty insane. And that's kind of like every other industry. If you're in the HVAC industry, you'll see parts that come out, they're like, wow, that's super expensive for that part. And it's just something you have to deal with because we are a niche industry and we are a seasonal industry. So a lot of the times, all the profit is made during the season, and then the off season, the manufacturers aren't making as much money. So it makes sense that things are going to be much more expensive because it's a very seasonal business. And the price of the fact that it's a seasonal business has been built into the purchase price of that item. If this was a kind of industry where it's all year round, I think the prices would be a little flatter and more, normal, if that's the word I want to use. But since it's kind of a niche industry where all the money is made in a 4 to 5 month period, of course you're going to pay more money for things in this kind of industry versus other industries. I think more than ever, the people thinking about having a pool built know this now, and it's not something that they take lightly. And if they can afford to be considering having a pool built, they can probably certainly afford the maintenance and the higher costs of operating that pool that a pool built in 2025 is going to run them versus a pool that was built in 1995 or even 2005. So it's kind of a normal thing now that the pool ownership is expensive and all the components that go with your pool is going to be more expensive. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those by subscribing to my YouTube channel Monday through Friday. I post one there during the week. Or go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, and on the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be a drop-down menu of a list of 1,700 podcasts for you. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.